Welcome to Rigging 101. In the session we have together, we will go through 8 different Maya files, which all have degrees of a rig completion. We'll first start by looking at a few fundamentals, as well as a few rules you need to follow, and I'll guide you through the whole step to create a character with IKFK switches as well as a facial, all in the space of probably 1 hour. So without further ado, let's start. We have a character here which is low poly, around PlayStation 2 numbers of faces. There is already a couple of joints inside the character, and we'll look at them in a moment. But first of all, let's try ourselves and make one strings of joints. I will hide my leg and do one with you right now. So to make a successful string of joints, I recommend you go from either these two views, these orthographic views, either the front or the side. They will make a good strings of joints, uh, will which will make them all align perfectly. If you were to do it in the perspective view, they might go a little bit all over the place. Be sure you're in the rigging, and you can click on the rigging shelf right here, where you'll have most of what you need right here. Let's start by create a join. We'll start by putting one around here, the hips. The second one will be a little bit more toward the front here. And the last one will be at the ankle. Well, we do need the toes, so let's put one for the toes. It should be around here. You can see where I put them. They are near edge loops, which will determine where the mesh will bend. Now, we place the last one toe, but let's place one more. This will make the joint before align with the rest of them. To know if they're aligned together perfectly or not, you can press W, left click on the mouse, and go to Object. Let's take in the perspective view. First, let's put this into place. I can even use the front view to make sure that it is perfectly in the middle. Neat. So this is my joint alignment. And if I press up and down on the keyboard, you can go up and down the string of joints. As you can see, this one isn't aligned, and we'll be able to fix it very quickly. However, let's talk about a few rules about the joints. The first joints in your strings of joints can have multiple translation, X, Y, and Z. However, those that follows cannot have translation in Y and Z. They can only have translation in X. So let's open this string of joint. 2 seems to be a problem. So let's take it out of the whole hierarchy. We'll put it back afterward. So now that it is out, it won't affect the other joints. Now what I need to do is spin it around 180 degrees. And that brings us to our second rule. There cannot be any rotation, but you can rotate your joints. What you need to do to fix this afterward is click on your rotation, right click, and then go to freeze, rotate. This will remove all rotation values inside your joint. We can put it back together with the other. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we can look back and see how it is. Good. They're all following the same orientation. And if I were to try them out to see how the rig would act with the mesh, I can just do a few rotation and check if my rotation here is good or not. Now I'll delete this one and I'll make the leg here that I made before reappear. Now let's check every single one of them to see where you can start your strings of joints. The first one will be the leg, which include knee, foot, and toe. If you want to add toes, you can do so. One joint or two joints, depending on what you want. Uh, yeah, you can see here 1, 2, 3. And these start your strings of joints. Right here I have a rotation. So I can go click, freeze, rotate. Of course, if I wanted to be very fast, I could click on the whole skeleton or select everything. Select my rotation, freeze, rotate. It is different from freeze transform. So really do this, freeze, rotate. Now let's continue. The other strings of joint you have are the spine, which can start with the hips, and then afterward, every spine. The only other one that follows is a clavicle, followed by the shoulder, elbow, and wrist. And every single finger is just like the toes. They are each their respective string of joints. Now I want you to pay attention with the fingers. Depending on the orientation you place, they will behave differently. As of now, if I were to make a test and select every single joint that I have here and do a rotation, you can see the final result of every single joint rotating. So this would be my final hand. This is how it would look like. If I take the thumb and do the same thing, this is where my thumb would end up on the model. These kind of tests should be done before you go ahead and connect everything. So just make sure that everything is clean and that rotations are okay. Another string of joint would be the neck and the head. You could continue your spine doing the neck and the head, but this is also fine. The other strings of joints that you'll have is probably the thumb, if your character have one. Everything on the face is merely a joint place. Let's take a look at them. We have joints place for the lips, one up, one in the middle corner here, and one in the corner right there. And you have one down here, one in the middle, and one at the corner. You could simplify this and put only 4 joints for the whole mouth, but placing a little bit more can give you more leeways as to how you want to animate the mouth. You can place one for the nose, one for the cheek, one for the bone cheek here, and one for the inner eyes. So you can do a whole lot more of emotion. Of course, we have the eyebrow. So 1, 2, 3 for the eyebrow, and the middle brow. So if the character is angry or confused or you want to do any sort of emotion, this could really help tune it up. Inside, we have the eyes. But there's more than the eyes. There's also the eyelid. I place 6 here, but 4 would do the job. A little bit like the mouth. You can add at least four, or you can go and add a little bit more to get more option out of your movements. These are placed in the middle of the eye. Make sure that you place them there. The other very important one is the jaw. And the jaw is placed around there. So if you were to move your own jaw and try to open it and close it, you'd see that the joint, the bone that you have kind of make a L shape and they are attached here. So if you look real human anatomy, this would be more accurate. And this is where you want your jaw to be. Of course, maybe we could rotate it a little bit more so it is more an angle. But for now, that would do just fine. So, these are all the different joints you can have in the body. Once you're ready, you can attach them. The leg will be attached to the hips. The clavicle will be attached to the last spine here, spine number 4. Of course, the next will be attached to the spine. Every single joint here will be attached to the head. However, inside the jaw will be the lower part of your mouth, as well as the tongue. Since if you open your mouth, these will be the different part that will move with it. All the fingers will be attached to the wrist. We also have a tail on this character. The tail could be attached to the hips. Any sort of extremities or other part on your character you can place a new string of joints without starting it from another part of your body. So for example, if the character had some ears, you would start a new string of joints and place them accordingly. Let's talk about one technique you can do, and you should do. Don't go and start the other side of your character. There is something you can do about that, and it will make your character much better. It's called mirror joint. In mirror joint, you can place Y to Z, as it is determined by where your character is standing. Maybe it's going to be different, but for this one, it's Y to Z. You can search for underscore L and replace it to underscore R. So everything that you've done from one side will be copied to the other side with its proper nomenclature. So I'll apply. And as you can see here, they both have different orientation. And that's good, because if we were to take both of them, go to rotation, object, and move them, it will facilitate the animator job to do this kind of movement. If they were both on the same orientation, it would do something like this. But now the animator has two options: to go in object and do these kind of movement, or to go in world or do these kind of movement. But if they were both the same or uh, the same alignment, they would only have this kind of world behavior. Make sure you do it also for the clavicle here, and of course for your fingers and every other part of your face. Let's jump to another scene. Now in this scene everything is connected, but there's something even more. If I open this and I can check, I have my skeleton, but I also have one more that is called system. And this is in relation to the IKFK. So if you want to do IKFK for your arms and your legs, you'll have to duplicate 2 times these strings of joints. You'll have to duplicate the leg, the knee, and the ankle 2 times. One will be IK, the other one will be FK. And you can do this for both sides. Once they're duplicated, you can simply drag them into system just like I did. Let's take a look at the skeleton, and I'll do the exactly what I did for the shoulder IKFK just to show you how it was done. So inside we have the hips that start the whole skeleton, and inside I have the leg, right and left, the tail, of course, and inside I have my spine until spine number 4. And from there I have the neck and of course my 2 arms. So what I did is I click on my clavicle here, I duplicate it 2 times, I open it until I go inside the wrist, delete every single finger, take this one, place it into system. Same thing here. Delete every single finger, take the shoulder, place it into system. And I can delete the superfluous clavicles. They are gone, and that leave me with 2 strings of shoulder that I can rename IK and FK. I'll delete them since I do not need them inside, they are already there. As for the face, we can take a quick look, but just like I said, everything that is connected to the jaw is the lower part of the lips as well as the tongue. Every single joint on the face is its own string of joints, even if there's no other joints linked to them, meaning that there are no worries when it comes to different kind of translation. You could add more, but this is quite simple, although the face has a few more joints, which make it a little bit more complex. Let's go to the other scene. Let's talk about controllers. Now, to make a controller, you'll have to first create a group by clicking on Control and G. And from there, you can create a curve or a NURB circle. Now, you could create it inside the viewport, or you could create it in the front side or the left side. This will result in different kind of um, orientation. So if I place them inside the group, select all of them and place it to 0, you'll see that every one of them start differently. Depending on the orientation of your joints, one side might make a perfect match. Otherwise, you'll have to rotate it yourself. Let's take a look of what it would, what kind of behavior it would do if I were to put it here on this slide. So I will select the joints that I want my controller to go on. Control click on it, since I take the parent after the children. I can click on spacebar, go to constraint, parent constraint, and have it right here, since I'm going to use it quite a lot. I do not want to maintain offset. I want it to go and translate and rotate, since I want this to have the same orientation as the joint. There we go. So as we can see, this one and this one don't give me the best result. So I could delete them. But this one give me already a nice result. Let's go back to the group. Since I did a parent constraint, I want to delete it because I only wanted to have the same orientation. So if I click on W, left click on the mouse and go to object, I'll see that I have the same orientation as the joint in the same position. There are multiple ways for you to go faster by creating controllers. such as taking this one, already entering GRP for groups, and inside already entering controller or CTRL and duplicating it. So if you duplicate it, you see that always inside it is always called CTRL, and you always have GRP. So if you were to do the leg, then you would just have to enter leg. No need to worry about suffix. And here, for example, it would be knee. Of course, it would be knee underscore right. Here, underscore right, and so on and so forth. Now let's delete them, and I'll show you just one more trick you can do to go a little bit faster. Let's say, for example, you were to do the tail. You would probably name each controller tail number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So what we can do here is let's go and call it GRP tail 01. Here the same, tail 01. I'll take out the controller that I have inside the group. I can select both of them and start duplicating them. And as you can see here, the number already changed himself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Well, 6. And all I would have to do is click on the correct joint, click on the correct group, apply my parent constraint, delete it, and place the controller inside. And then put zeros and values. And there we go. It is now our line. Now remember that you do groups and you place controller inside to have the controller at 0, 0. The group will have the position and the correct alignment, while the controller inside will remain at 0, since every single rigs in existence have controller that start at 0. If this was to start with a few rotation weird and maybe a small translate, and you were to try to put back your rig at 0 by selecting all controllers and placing 0 in values, you would have some very weird result. So this is why we do groups and place controller inside. Now, remember last time we had things inside the systems, right? Shoulder, IK, FK, legs, IK, FK. Certain controllers will be for forward kinematic, FK, and other will be for inverse kinematic, IK. I place a main controller here inside a group called controller. But for now, for this demonstration, I place everything that is related to the leg, tail, spine, arm, and face in different groups. They are not renamed for now, but as you can see, I use one of my technique to go slightly faster. It's already GRP and CTRL. So for the forward kinematic on the leg, I placed circles. So I have one circle here for the leg, one for the knee, one for the ankle, and another one for the toe. For the inverse kinematic, I have one for the ankle, which I place in a different place than the one that I have here, and slightly shaped differently, and one more here for the leg that I slightly rearrange for it to be kind of square-ish. I have one controller for the spine here, one that will have every single things going upward, because this would be like my main controller or my cog, center of gravity. I have one for the hip, one for the 3 spines that I have available here, and I didn't place it yet, but there would be one for the neck and one for the head. Let's take a look at the arm. In the arm, just like the leg, we have these circle controllers, which are for forward kinematic, and we have 2 square controller for inverse kinematic. As of my knowledge, there is no way to simply mirror the controllers. You will have to do them manually, and it would be slightly harder if you were to just, let's say, I have the harm here, I duplicate it, and I simply inverse my scale for -1. Uh, this would not work since this orientation here is not the same as the one on the joint. And if you were to move them, it would create some complication. So this kind of technique isn't really good. But what you can do, once you've created all of your control on one side, you could duplicate it. And afterward, you could maybe move it slightly somewhere else and just reapply every single constraint here to have them aligned. So let's say I want to do the arm. I already have all of the controller here done. All I have to do is click on the correct joint. So this one would be the arm. Click on the correct controller and start just applying my constraint. They would be correctly aligned, and um, I would save a little bit of work. This one goes with this one, and this one goes with this one, and so on and so forth. Afterward, don't forget to delete the constraints that are on your controllers. Well, I'm selecting the controllers, but this is slightly wrong. See, even sometime I can make a mistake. Would have to do if you Control Z. And remember that I'm doing groups, therefore I need to select the group. So if I were to do it again, I will select the shoulder, select the correct group, but since they are not named, it is much harder to find them. Here we go. So maybe renaming your controller first would be a good step. And so on and so forth. Let's take a look at the face. For the face, I simply place tiny circles. It doesn't need to be super elaborate, but as of now, everyone have a circle so they can be moved. There would be a few more controller that I need to create, but these would be just controller that would englobe other controllers. They won't have any sort of constraint to them. Speaking of which, there is 2 different part of the body where you want them to be inside different groups. Now, here's why. And maybe I'll dial back and talk just about the fingers here. I did the same for the toes, but let's talk about the fingers. Since we are doing IKFK, and the IKFK only relates to the shoulder, elbow, and wrist, these are not part of these systems. However, you want them to be controlled by both. Therefore, every single fingers that you have here would be part of a larger group. So I'll do it now so you can see a little bit more what I'm talking about. And I'll show it to you later as well. So all of these, I'll select them, click on Control G, which would create a new group that I could call, let's say, GRP, fingers, left. And these are a new group that englobes everything. And when I apply IK and FK, I can select, uh, let's say, the wrist of both IK and FK and make a parent constraint to the finger group so that both IK and FK would move all the fingers. But I'll show it to you a little bit soon. So let's move on. Since all the controls are done, you would just have to do every single one on each parts, and that's pretty much it. Once everything is done, it should look a little bit like this. Now I didn't do the face yet, and every single one of them are inside here, but we can focus on the body. Now inside the character here, I have model, controller, skeleton, and system. You should keep them clean. You should keep them inside these kind of groups. So when you import your character or when you make a reference, they would only have character. They won't have everything everywhere in the outliner. And when you have a big scene, it is crucial that it is clean. Same thing goes for display. You would have your joint inside, your model, and your controllers. Now to create a display or to add things in your display. Let's say I want to add my controller in the controller one. I would either click here while everything is selected to create a new layer and assign selected object, or if it's already there, I can left click and add my selected object, which is good when you are adding new controllers and new things in your scene and you just want to add them inside an already existing layer. I'll add my object. As you can see here, every single one of my controller can be visible or not visible, which would leave me with only what I want to see. Let's take a look at system. In this one, there is already some IK and FK done. They are not constrained yet, but they are done. Let's take, for example, here, arm left, and move it. And as you can see here, one of my string of joint here of shoulder left IK is done. Now to do an IK, it is as simple as selecting a few joints and just creating an IK. I'll show it to you right now by selecting the leg. I'll go in my side view since it is a little bit simpler. I would select the leg here. Let's say I will delete the left leg here, no need for that. And I want it to be the inverse kinematic, leg left, inverse kinematic, leg left. I can select here in my shelf the create IK handle, click on leg left, control click on foot, and voila. My IK handle is created. It is as simple as that. Afterward, I can place it inside my system and rename it accordingly. Leg left. So these are the parts that will be in my system for now. Let's go over skeleton. We already saw it. We can take a look at the controller. They are all inside a hierarchy now. And we can even just take a little look at the skeleton as well. My skeleton is like this, right? You got hips, spine, neck, clavicules are here, spine 4, and the controller will follow a similar order. We'll start with the main controller. However, here, things will be slightly different. As you can see, I have my inverse kinematic um, controller, the hips, and I have a string for forward kinematic, and I have also the other side. Now when I want to leave there, mostly fingers, and as you can see, I aligned my group with the wrist, so the group is at the correct position for both sides. Same thing goes with the toes. Toe 1, toe 2. I can every time I have so many things inside, I can take the time to just reorganize my outliner so it is much easier to follow. If I just click here, put the toes there, I believe I should have another toe. We'll select it on the model here. These toes were there instead of outside. These need to be outside, just like the fingers. Let's say here, this is my upper body. Upper body could also be named cog for center of gravity. It is more conventional. And from there I have the hips, which is separate from spine. Since if I move the hips, it's going to move it independently from the rest that is upward. But if I click on my cog, then everything will follow. But there is a few things we can place inside um, the legs right here. So everything that is forward kinematic can be placed inside the cog or under the hips. Forward kinematic on the leg would mostly be used when the character is flying through the air or has been exploded from some places and you want to have the freedom to animate the leg as you see fit without having the constraint of moving the feet every time, since inverse kinematic usually stays in one place and doesn't follow the whole body. Behave slightly differently. So I can place these hips forward kinematic inside the oh, inside the hip controller right here. So if I were to move these, they would move the forward kinematic controller as well. These would be a correct position. Inverse kinematic can remain there. As for the fingers and the toes, as I was talking a little bit earlier, you want both of them to follow inverse kinematic and forward kinematic. So an example of doing that, I'll do it now, but I'll be able to show it, of course, a little bit later as well, is to select your last controller here of the forward kinematic, which is the feet, and select the proper toe, go to constraint, and make a parent constraint. Maintain offset, translate, rotate, apply. And if I do a small test, you'll see that the toe are following. And inside the toe, the larger toe controller are each and every single toe. And what I want to do is to click on the inverse kinematic controller and do a constraint on the toe as well. So when I move the inverse kinematic, the toe will follow as well. Now it is at 50-50 between two, and we'll have to do a proper IK-FK switch and place it inside the node editor. So when you switch from one to the other, it will follow either one or the other. And I believe that would be all for the controllers. Everything is in order here, from the main controller to the cog to the different spines to the hips. Also, inside the cog is both the spines and the hips. Should look a little bit like this: cog, spine, hips. And if I open the spine without going too far, I'll have both clavicles are left and right, and of course the neck with the head. And inside the head would it be all the different face controller that I have created. I'll be able to show it to you slightly later. As of now, they are outside, so we can only focus on the body. So let's jump to another scene. There. Let's take a look at system. As you can see, now there are some constraints. So if I were to move, for example, the leg, you see that now they're at 50-50. Now to do this, and we can do one together, let's say I would have to delete a few things, but I'll be able to show it to you without doing too many manipulation to break the rig. Let's take this leg, left leg, to do the IKFK. And just remind yourself that it is the same process to do on every single limbs that you want to do IKFK. In with this case, both arms and both legs. I will close a few things, so it is slightly overwhelming. Now, to start doing IKFK, I need to constrain my controllers. And I can constrain my controllers to every single one of the joints that I have with controller that are appropriately placed. Most of them will be a parent constraint. Parent constraint have both translate and rotate, and give the animator a good range of option to play from there. So every single spine is a parent constraint. The neck and the head is a parent constraint as well. And most of all of the toes are parent constraint. Fingers are all parent constraint. And to do a parent constraint, remember, select the parent, then select the children. Before we use joint to controller to align them, but now that they are aligned, we can take controller, the joint, and click on apply to have them attach. But let's go back to IKFK. Now, this controller here, I will close the skeleton since I don't need it for now. This inverse kinematic hip will be attached to this leg joint. But not specifically this one, but the one that is inverse kinematic. Now, it is not visually possible to see them unless you were to put them out and then put them back together. So we'll have to play mostly in the outliner. So as I said, I can take the IPS left inverse kinematic and go in the system and find leg left inverse kinematic. Click on the leg here and apply a parent constraint. I'll click on apply. It would give this one right here. Do the same for the ankle here. Select your inverse kinematic controller. Select not the one visually here, but the one in the outliner. That is foot. Uh, mm, Not even foot. It will be the IK handle. So select your controller here, go to your IK handle leg left, since it is the inverse kinematic controller, and apply a parent constraint. This will give it right here. Meaning that if I were to move this one, it would move it right here. It is the same as taking this one and moving it here. But we apply a parent constraint so we can move it with a controller. Let's do the forward kinematic. So every circle goes with every single joint that they should be with. And the same thing goes there. It's going to be a forward kinematic inside the system. So I take the controller, click on the leg forward kinematic, apply constraint. Click on the controller, click on the leg here, not the one visually here, but the one inside my outliner. Knee, apply. Click here on your ankle, and then outliner, forward kinematic, foot, apply, and this will give you 3 constraint. Now, remember that you have three strings of joints, IKFK and the normal one. To apply both forward and inverse kinematic to your joints, you would have to select, we have here left leg IK, leg left FK, and go inside your skeleton and grab leg normal, leg left, and apply a constraint. Do the same thing, select your knee IK, knee FK, and then normal knee. Yeah, that is in your skeleton. Apply your constraint. Foot, 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 apply constraint. And you would do this for both legs and both arms. Let's go to another scene which already have the IKFK system implemented. I created a new shape that I also placed in system. And this one is attached to whichever part you want, uh, just so we can follow the rig. So for example, I could attach it to one of the knuckles, or I could create something inside, for example the wrist, and attach it to it. You can parent constrain it to anything as long as it follows. Or you could even place it somewhere else. But I find it visually pleasing when it's right here. So I have my controller IKFK, and I created an IKFK switch. To do that, you can click on your controller, go in Edit, and click on Add Attribute. From there, IKFK switch, you can create one right here by naming it, with a minimum of 0 and a maximum of 1, which means that when you slide it, it will either be 0 or 1. And you can click on Add or OK, and this will appear. As you can see here, it is now attached, or it is now done. And I can switch from IK to FK. I will show it to you how to do that in a few moments. But first, let's talk about this one right here. It is a pole vector. It is the new thing that is inside our system. Pole vector is essentially a way to rotate your elbow or knee in the inverse kinematic system. So if I go in inverse and IK, and I use this one, as you can see here, it will rotate my elbow. It can be used to adjust your model and is quite useful. Now, this is a simple rig, so there are no twist bone joints that can prevent some weird rotation that can happen here with the hem. But if you wanted to go and learn a bit more about that, I would suggest to make a few research on Google, and you would probably find how to do it. But let's keep it simple. Now, to create this one, I uh, click on the spacebar. There's a menu here called Create, and I created a locator. You could create a controller as well, and that would do the job. For the sake of example, I'll create one right here and put it inside a group, as it is also a controller. Now I would rename them, for example, pole vector, feet left, or arm left, and I want to place it as accurate as possible to my elbow or knee. So I can click here on the elbow, click on my group, apply a parent constraint, do not maintain offset, and it will appear right where it needs to be. I will click on my group here, go to object, since it has the same orientation, it will follow the same orientation here, and I can just place it a little bit further. And from there, I can click on my locator and my where is it? IK handle arm left, and go to constraint, pole vector, just right here. And there are no options, well, only weight. And I would just click on apply, and this will create a pole vector constraint. I'll do a few Control Z and delete what I have done here, since it is already done. As you can see inside the IK handle, there is a pole vector constraint and a parent constraint. Parent constraint for the controller and a pole vector for this little pole vector controller. And these are the things inside my system. And once the IKFK is done, you can click on Control H to hide the joints you no longer need. And they will appear gray. So I'll close my system for now. I can open, let's say, the controllers inside my system. Let's go here. Controller there. And talk just a little bit more about the fingers. Like I said, this one have the fingers following it. This inverse kinematic. Let's put it like this for now. And FK also have the finger following them. How I did this is I simply click on both wrist inverse kinematic and forward kinematic and apply a parent constraint to them on the finger set that is right here inside the main controller. And this little parent constraint will make sure that it always follow either forward kinematic or inverse kinematic. I'll do a few Control Z just to put them back into place. And let's explore how to do a system like this. So first and foremost, we'll want to select the controller here, which have our IKF key switch. And we also want to select the joints here that have both IK and FK affected. So it would be the normal shoulder, normal elbow, and normal wrist. I will select all of their parent constraint. So it's like all the parent constraint of the normal elbow, normal shoulder, and normal wrist, as well as your IKFK switch and the finger parent constraint. And from there, you can open the node editor. And as you can see here, it is already completed. But let's clear it now and show to you how it was done. In the node editor, you can clear the graph by clicking on the clear, and you can add whatever you have selected here with the plus and also make them disappear. You have three different kind of menus here that can show few things, a couple of things, and all the things you might need. You should click here and have everything open. Now let's try and make this slightly more clear. I have the controller, which have my IKFK switch right here in the bottom. I also have here every single constraint that will be used, which you can see here: parent constraint, wrist left, elbow left, shoulder F, and the fingers. Now everything is connected to forward kinematic, but let's delete that. I'll show it to you how it is done. You would click on tab, add a plus minus average, and you can rename this plus minus average to this one is arm left. You can open it. This little icon is the same as the one at the top. And you would open input 1, place the IKFK switch 1 time, 2 times. Every time you put one more, another one appear. You can delete the first one, input 1D. And from there, you can click on output 1D and connect them to inverse kinematic. You can click on it, click back there, click on it, click back to inverse kinematic, inverse kinematic. And I have forward kinematic that I also need to apply. But this one will not go through my plus minus average. It will go directly on the constraint. Click it here, put it there. Click it here, put it there. This essentially is my 0 and 1. That is from the controller. Now to make this happen, let's click on plus minus average 2 times. This will open the attribute editor. What we want to do is click on operation, click subtract, open 1D, and click on 1. So as of now, I should be able to switch from inverse to forward and have them both work one at a time. Now there's one more trick to this, and it is the visibility. Now it has already been done, but usually you would see both forward kinematic and inverse kinematic. To make sure that you have visibility turned on and off as you switch from IK to FK, I want you to select all the controllers needed here. So all the forward kinematic as well as the inverse kinematic. No need to select the IKFK switch, but these 4 controllers. Open back the node editor and click on plus. As you can see, they are already linked, but we can take a look at what exactly are they linked to. So I have forward kinematic here, inverse, inverse, and forward. So just as we did with the IKFK switch, where my plus minus average was linked to the IK and the one here was linked to FK. I'll open all of them slightly more. I can connect them to visibility. So this FK, let's say that I delete it and do it again. This FK here will be connected to the visibility of the FK, just as it is with the parent constraint. And I can do that for the shoulder and the wrist. And this one here will be connected to the shoulders. Now I believe they are not connected now, because if I were to switch it, or was there a slight mistake on my part for the visibility? Controller shoulder IK, controller shoulder FK. Hold on, I will select them back just to make sure that I am correct. These are here, but they should be connected. Maybe it is a bug from Maya or something like this, but this would be the same thing as I did for controller wrist, as I did for the for kinematics. I would just click here and connect it to visibility. Click here, connect it to visibility, and that would create this visibility thing that you can see here right now. Forward in inverse kinematic. Maybe it's a bug. Not sure why, but it is supposed to be connected, and you can assume that it is just that. You can connect them as I did with the forward kinematic. And if I take a look at everything here, for the pole vector, you could constrain them to some places. For example, on the inverse kinematic, you could create a parent constraint so they always follow, or you could leave them like this as they are. This is mostly up to you, but I would suggest that you constrain them to something, such as maybe the controller here, the controller that is inverse kinematic. So they are both together. If I take a look at everything, just to make sure that I'm not forgetting anything, I believe this would make the entirety of the rig right here, without the facial, of course. So we got joints going on through all the whole body. We have IK and FK for both upper limbs and lower limbs. We have IKFK controller or IKFK switch to make them switch from one to the other. And we parented the fingers so they both follow forward kinematic and inverse kinematic, creating their own little groups. And we can take a look back at everything that is inside the system: inverse kinematic, IK handles, IKFKs, the group, um, the IKFK switch controllers, the pole vectors. Inside the controllers, we have, of course, everything that is going to follow the main, the toes. This upper body is the cog. The toes here, the fingers, the inverse kinematic um, controller for the feet, and inside I have the upper body, which is the cog, the spine here, the hips. Inside the hips, I have the inverse kinematic hips and inverse kinematic right and left. Since if I am to move here, let me show it to you. I'm going to switch this to inverse kinematic and move this here. This would create this kind of effect. So we need to place the inverse kinematic hips controller right under the hips. This would also make a nice booty roll. We have the tail, and if I go inside spine, we have everything that we need uh, for clavicles, necks, head, and so forth. If we take a look at the clavicles, we got shoulder forward kinematic, shoulder inverse kinematic. So the same principle as this here. So if I were to move the clavicle, it would also move the inverse kinematic. So they are both at the same place. Or at the very least, I can have this a little bit more control over there. So inside here, I have inverse kinematic wrist, inverse kinematic shoulder, and of course, everything that is forward kinematic that goes until the wrist. And remember that the fingers are inside the main controller right here. So let's go and jump to another scene, and that is the face. Now the face is uh, not too complicated uh, because all of the controller, except for the eyes, are only parent constrained. But as I talked a little bit earlier, we have macro and micro controllers. So let's take an example for the eyebrow. Now, I've created a controller that has inside every single eyebrow. It is not parent constrained to anything. It only has uh, every eyebrow inside. So they are easier to move. The same goes for the lower lips, the upper lips, and that's pretty much it. Well, except for the eyes. There is also a controller that can move both the eyes. Now, like I said, every single one of them is a parent constraint. The one that is a little bit tricky is the jaw. Now, you would create a controller and parent it here, but since we can't see the jaw inside them, the whole mesh, we have to drag out a controller outside, which I placed right here. And this would be the jaw. And the jaw would have the lower part and the tongue. For the eyes, it is the only one that has a different constraint. Let's take a look inside. Hold on, I will uncheck selecting mesh to have an easier time. You have different option here that can be very useful as to check and uncheck certain things. Unchecking geo or unchecking um, select joints can help when you do a few things during your process of rigging. So these one right here um, are the eyes. If we take a look here, the eyes have all the eyelid inside of them. The jaw would have all the lower lips as well as the tongue. But every single one of them are their own little joints. But these one would have the look at constraint, or in Maya it is called a aim constraint. An aim constraint, you would have your controller here, click on your controller and then click on the eyes and click on aim constraint. This will aim the rotation of your joints toward your controller, which means that you will have two eyes that you can move and make the character see. Concretely, if I'm to go here, I believe every single one are done and complete. So all the constraints have been done. And remind yourself that they are all parent constraint. So these jaw have the lower lips. This is all the upper lips. You have the nose, the cheeks, cheekbone, and the inner eye, as well as the eyebrow, and of course, the eyes. Now, these controller started at the joint eyes, and once the look at constraint was done, I move the group to this position. Now we won't be able to see it since the mesh is not skin, but if we go to a skin mesh, I will open another scene. We'll be able to see the eyes move as they should. I'll open my controllers, go a little bit more forward here, and you can take a look at the eye and see that it is following. And I have my controller so that both eyes are following. Let's take just a little look back here to see the different constraint so you're not mistaken. I need to open the skeleton. Go inside. That's a whole lot of constraints. Here, left, and as you can see, it is a aim constraint. And that should be all for our little crash course on rigging. Of course, we can go more in depth, but this overall overview should help you make a rig on your own. And if there is anything or any sort of question that goes while you are rigging, you can always look back at the video and piece things out a little bit with everything that we talked about, from skeleton to controllers to the constraints. And of course, there is the final step, that is the bind skin. So this is fairly simple, but we won't be talking about skinning, of course, since it is its own beast. But let's take a quick look at it just for fun. Uh, you would select the geometry you want to bind. Of course, you would select the rig you want it to be bind to. Go to skinning, bind skin, and from there, since it is a hierarchy and I want every single joint inside to be applied to that skin, I will leave it to joint hierarchy. However, if it was just a few joints I wanted to select, I could go on select joints. I would use the influence that I want to have for the different parts. For example, if it's three, then three different joint would share influence between each other. For example, the knee would have the two more here, and then the hips would have a little bit more influence on these two. So I would suggest that you leave it at three, and then you would just click on apply, and then from there, your rig would follow the whole part. Now the clothes are not following because I only applied it to the body. And if you wanted to go back and add some more stuff or maybe make some changes, you would go to skin, unbind skin. And from there you could delete history, so the character would go back to its original pose, or if you moved it a little bit, you could keep history or bake history, so it has the new pose you apply. For example, you could go from an A pose to a T pose. And that is everything for this crash course. Hopefully, it will be very helpful for you, and uh, maybe I'll do one for skinning in the near future.